Chapter 22, The Silence of Galeana.
After 2 doggone days and nights tramping through that infernal desert, where the sand's so hot it scorched a lizard's tail, Ramos and them 2 German gals, with lips cracked worse than a dry creek bed and feet dragging like they was hauling anvils, left their tracks in the quiet sands of northern Mexico. The sun come up slow and mean, blazing down like it had a personal grudge, when all of a sudden a faint puff of dust kicked up on the horizon, shining in the light like a ghost's whisper. A low, steady thump-thump come with it, a kind that tells of horses. Lots of 'em. Too many for just some piddling patrol. Subteniente Ramos, he stopped dead in his tracks. "Riders," says he, squinting out over that godforsaken stretch of dirt. That dust cloud was long and wiggly, moving with a beat like a war drum. One of them soldier boys would know from campaigns past. The faint clatter, orderly as a church hymn, proved it. Riders, sure enough. Plenty of 'em, and coming fast. But was they friend or foe? From that far off weren't no flag nor a speck of color to tell. A spark of hope lit up in his chest, quick as a streak of lightning in a summer storm, burning away the fog that settled in his mind. He didn't wait a lick. Up he jumped, brushing the dust off his raggedy uniform, hunting for a high spot. He spied a big old rock, a hump of stone, looking out over the plain, and scrambled up it, hands shaking like a leaf in a gale. At the top he flung his arms high, yanked off his jacket, and waved it like a revival preacher waving a Bible, hollering with every ounce of breath in him. "Hey! Over here! Help!" He flopped and hopped, swinging his arms like a crow with a broke wing, begging the heavens for notice. He'd shrink down and rear up again, his shadow stretching long and lonesome across the rock. Only his own echo come back, fading off into the wilds. But them riders, they didn't stop, didn't turn, didn't even slow. They galloped west, heedless like he was nothing but a shimmer in the desert heat. Not a head turned, not a hand raised, just horses and dust melting into that red-hot horizon. Ramos slid down that rock quiet as a whipped dog. His steps was heavy like his boots was full of lead. His lips trembled something fierce. He looked at them 2 gals. They'd been hoping right alongside him, and now they stared off into nothing, eyes dry as the sand round them. They didn't see us," he whispered, voice cracking like old leather. The thought that rescue was so close, yet slipped through their fingers like water, stabbed his heart clean through. Down he sank, face in his hands. For a spell it felt like all was lost. Pictures of that endless wasteland, a dying out there amongst the rocks, parched and nameless, without so much as a prayer to send 'em off, come rushing into his head like a flood. The burning weren't just from the ground no more, it was deep in his soul. But by and by, with a voice all choked, but a spirit that wouldn't quit, he hauled himself up. With a grit born not of hope, but a plain old stubbornness, he said, "If them riders pass through yonder, there's gotta be a road. And if there's a road, there's a chance. Them tracks'll lead us." In about an hour, they come to where the sand was all tore up by hooves. The trail stretched out straight, fresh as a new plowed field. Some spots deep where them horses had tore along at a clip. Ramos took the lead, but his eyes weren't them of a soldier sure of his way no more. He carried the whole blasted desert on his shoulders, seemed like. In that lonesome wild, they was just 3 shadows creeping along the edge of silence, with broken dreams and hunger snapping at their heels like a hound too tired to bark. But they kept on walking, 'cause there weren't nothing else to do. West they went, never stopping, till the light faded and the wilds got too dark to see. There they made camp, with the deep heavy quiet of folks who still got a sliver of hope clinging to 'em. A few miles off, old Don Laureano, that weathered vaquero who knowed the desert like the back of his hand, come riding into Galeana with his mules piled high with sacks of corn creaking under the load. Alongside him, Sergeant Berríos was grinning ear to ear, already dreaming of cold beer and plates of grub steaming hot enough to fog a mirror. Galeana weren't no proper town, mind you, just an old scar scratched deep in the hot eye of Mexico. Low houses, whitewashed stone, with walls thick as a Bible to keep out the heat and the ghosts of yesteryear. The streets was packed dirt, washed out by rains, cracked by drought, with ditches, agave patches, and stables where mules loafed in the shade chewing their cud. Ain't no fancy gates marked the place. The road slipped through a narrow gorge of brittle trees and rocks wore smooth by the wind. At the mouth, a stone cross stood lonesome, raised for them poor souls cut down in the last engine raid. A quiet nudge that nobody around here forgets. The church, with its white bell tower, gleamed in the noonday sun like a promise of mercy. And the marketplace, bustling with soldiers, women folk, and young'uns, thrummed with the heavy beat of lives that was tough but still kicking. Don Laureano eased off his mule in the plaza, slow and straight back, like a feller who'd long quit proving himself to anybody. Berríos, though, was all lit up like a firecracker. "Glory be, Galeana," says he, nigh bouncing in his boots. "If I don't find that tavern, Las Estrellas Brillantes, I'll turn into a dadgum cactus. Cold beer, fried chicken, and if I don't bust from joy, maybe a dance to boot." Folks around him looked up, some with a chuckle, some not caring a whit. Locals was a rough bunch, farmers, old soldiers, a priest or two, military men, and merchants passing through, all of 'em sun-baked, clad in thick wool spun local, wide sombreros, heavy boots, and belts with knives sharp enough to shave a hog. The women wore long skirts, flowery blouses, and shawls bright as a peacock's tail. The young'uns scampered barefoot, dodging tween carts and critters. The afternoon sun scorched Galeana like a skillet left too long on the fire. The church bells hung quiet, but the air carried an echo of days gone by, floating amongst the mule shadows, sombreros, and hurried steps. Sergeant Berríos shook the dust off his breeches, his eyes sparkling like he'd struck gold. "Oh, Don Laureano," says he, grinning so wide it near split his face, "I told you my luck's turned. Look how this town welcomes us, with sunshine and purty gals." Don Laureano tugged his sombrero low over his brow, staring out at the plaza with the heavy stillness of a man who'd seen too many sunrises. "Luck don't linger long round these parts, Sergeant," says he, slow and steady. "It lasts about as long as a swig of water in this heat. Want to keep it? Step soft. All I want's a cold beer, a hot plate of victuals, and if the good Lord's feeling kind, a gal in a white dress, twirling to a guitar tune," Berríos shot back. "You know, like them old Mexican tales." Don Laureano didn't crack a smile, his eyes fixed on that church tower, where an old white bell hung still, like a warning nobody heeded no more. "You see that bell up yonder?" says he. "I see it," says Berríos. "What of it?" "It rung once for them that never walked out of a dance alive," says Don Laureano, voice low. "Rung for my own kin, too. Galeana, don't forget, Sergeant. Not the living, nor the dead." Berríos let out a long sigh, running a hand across his throat like he was checking it was still there. "Well then," says he, "let's drink to 'em. To the dead, to the living, and to them still fool enough to hope. Salute." Don Laureano clapped him on the shoulder quick and firm, then started walking, his poncho slung over his back. "Come on then," says he. "Let's hunt up Las Estrellas Brillantes. If they still got that cactus wine, you'll be dreaming of gals all night." "Dream or no," muttered Berríos, trailing after, "it's a sight better than sand in my teeth and scorpions in my boots." About an hour off, down a dusty trail twisting twixt cacti and rocks baked to a crisp by the sun, come a cavalry squadron the likes of which Galeana hadn't seen since the church bells rung out for the first stone laid in its walls. 50 riders lined up neat as a pin come thundering in, their flags flapping in the scorching breeze. The sun hit their weapons just so, making 'em gleam like a blacksmith's pride. Lances and carbines, polished to a shine, looked like they was plucked straight out of some general's wildest dream, sharp, straight, and plumb frightening.
The horses, big muscly brutes with coats shining like new money and eyes blazing like coals, pranced with a strut, near knowing they was turning heads. The townsfolk, their eyelids heavy from heat and the same old drudge, perked up like they'd seen the second comin'. Folks spilled out of their houses, women clutching their shawls, barefoot young'uns chasing the dust, old men crossing themselves quiet-like. Them riders had faces bronzed by the sun, eyes hard as flint. Their mustaches, twisted up fancy, gave 'em a stage play look, but there weren't nothing put on 'bout 'em. Their uniforms was crisp, brass buttons winking like little suns, boots so clean you'd swear they'd never touched dirt. At the head rode an officer, chest broad as a barn door, saber hanging at his side like a warning nobody dared test. His face was scruffy but proud, and he didn't crack a smile as he passed, though his eyes gave a nod without saying a word. The plaza in Galeana went still as a grave. Even the flies seemed to hush up and hold their breath. These weren't just soldiers. They was heralds of something bigger, a power far from the dust and daily ruckus of this frontier speck. A young sprout spat in his hand and whispered all wide-eyed, "Lord of mercy, it scares a feller just to look at 'em." And for a spell Galeana weren't just some wore-out town in northern Mexico. It was Rome. It was Paris. It was the dadgum center of the world. Over at Los Estrellas Brillantes, where the shade and cool air was worth more'n a sack of silver, the racket of chairs scraping, dice clattering, and boots thudding on the floor filled the place. In a dark corner Joaquin sat, hemmed in by playing cards, empty bottles, and promises broke to bits. He'd slipped the ambush at Galeana with his hide intact, but loneliness had him in a chokehold. He was hiding out bored to death, and boredom had drug him to gambling. Not 'cause he was a fool, though he played cards worse'n a mule plays checkers, but 'cause he had hope that one day he'd win enough to hightail it out of there back to Santa Fe to tell his tale and have folks believe it. Luck had stuck by him like the devil himself was betting on his side. He'd scraped together a tidy pile of coin till a military courier come hunting him, finding him at the table, face red as a beet, palms sweating on them grimy wore-out cards. "Senor Joaquin," says the courier, "orders from the garrison, right now." His heart jumped like a frog in a skillet. Maybe, just maybe, somebody wanted to hear his story at last. In his head he was already spinning the yarn, how he'd led the retreat, slipping through them rocks like a ghost, burying half that band of Apaches what jumped Ramos's convoy, all with his own 2 hands. He clapped on his hat, cinched his belt, and strode out of that tavern with steps long as a preacher's sermon, thinking maybe, just maybe, luck had his name wrote on it after all.